Ever had a grown man in designer sunglasses call your $8,000 flood wall a joke in front of the whole neighborhood? Yeah, that'll light a fire under you. Especially when spring storms in Texas aren't just thunder and rain. They're acts of God. And you know the only thing standing between your wife and another nightmare is that so-called joke you just poured your life savings into. The crazy part? I built that wall for Martha, my wife, my whole world, because the last time our yard flooded, she spent days lost, crying, not knowing where she was. Dementia's cruel like that. I swore she'd never go through that again. And you want to talk about insult on top of injury? I'm talking about the HOA barbecue, community gathering, grilled hot dogs, fake smiles, and there's Winston Ashford III, king of the Willowbrook Estates Board, making cracks about my wall in front of everyone. What's next, Donovan? Sandbags. He laughed, the kind of laugh that lets you know he's never held a shovel in his life. This peasant stonework is a joke, he snickered, his minions nodding like bobbleheads. Then, with his chest all puffed out, he gives me an ultimatum: remove it or we foreclose. I hadn't even finished my second burger when the sky let loose a Texas-sized downpour, the kind that turns curbs into creeks. Only now, the joke's about to be on them. Let's back up. Name's Garrett Donovan, retired plumber, Army Corps veteran, amateur engineer when duty calls. Moved here in 2019 with Martha, looking for some peace. The grass was green, the HOA fees were high, and every mailbox looked like it belonged in the Hamptons. I thought we'd found safety until I met the Ashfords. Winston, always the third, could spot a non-college graduate at 200 yards, and his wife Belle treated aesthetic harmony like it was sacred text. Their partner in snobbery? Dr. Kenneth Silverton, heart doc with the biggest lot, always ready to correct your grammar at a funeral. Thing is, their Prize Creekside lots flooded every spring. The original developers built drainage to handle that. But after a few months of living here, I noticed something off. Storm drains rerouted, concrete barriers popped up where they shouldn't, all steering water away from the Ashfords and straight toward our middle-income row. One hurricane later, Martha and I lost everything in the basement. Her piano, family photos, all gone. Meanwhile, the board's homes stayed dry as a bone. So I did what I do best, rolled up my sleeves, built a wall that would make better homes and gardens proud. Stone, drainage channels, flower boxes on top. Permitted, engineered, paid for with sweat and every last cent we had. The HOA's response? Passive-aggressive letters, violation notices, then Winston himself on my porch with Belle and her perfume cloud trailing behind. This fortress you've built violates community standards, he sniffed, clipboard shaking. Belle chimed in, it looks like trailer park trash. The stench of entitlement was thicker than her perfume. They gave me 30 days to tear it down or face legal action. Then Dr. Silverton piled on from the street. What's next, Donovan? Sandbags and plastic sheeting? And they all laughed. That moment, something snapped. Not anger. No, this was the ice-cold clarity of a man who solved impossible problems with nothing but duct tape and pure will. I decided if they wanted to fight, they'd get one. I rebuilt the wall. Fieldstone this time, curving with the land, planters with real drainage, lighting that made it look like a fancy Tuscan villa. Every change made it stronger. When they called an emergency HOA meeting, I came loaded for bear. Permits, engineering surveys, city approval, every last T crossed. Winston opened the show, acting like Congress. Belle flashed her phone, photos of my medieval fortress on the big screen. I let them talk, then stood up. Fieldstone masonry, million-dollar villas use it. Permitted, surveyed, up to code. The room went dead quiet. Then I pulled out my folder. Winston, your pool deck extends 14 feet into the setback. No permit for that. Belle, that gazebo's supposed to be temporary. You've had it for years. No foundation permit. Dr. Silverton, your boat dock sits on protected habitat. Federal violations. Look them up. Suddenly, they weren't laughing. But the real thunderbolt came when I started connecting the dots. Approvals for creekside lots, denials for the rest. I'd built more than a wall. I'd built a case. Winston tried to shut it down, but I had more. Pulled out my Army Corps surveys. Someone redirected our drainage to protect a handful of properties. That's not just unfair, it's illegal. The city calls that theft of a public utility. Dr. Silverton sputtered, but I pressed on. Penalties up to $50,000 per violation, plus restoration. And I've documented it all. The room started to murmur. Neighbors were finally seeing the pattern. A few days later, a city inspector showed up. Winston and Silverton flanked him like nervous bodyguards. The inspector was a by-the-book guy, boots clicking on my walkway. He inspected my wall, wiring, structure, drainage, declared it better than most contractors' work. Then I took him out back to see the real crime, the Ashford's barriers and diverters. Unpermitted work, he muttered, snapping photos. This could run $50,000 in fines, maybe more. And if there's environmental damage, well, the EPA will be interested. You could see Winston doing the math. After the inspector left, he tried to play diplomat. Maybe we can come to an understanding. I gave him my terms. Restore the drainage. Pay damages. Resign from a board. He laughed it off, but I could see the cracks forming. The next week, I got served, restraining order, legal threats, the works. They claimed my wall was a public hazard, redirecting water and endangering neighbors. The irony was thick enough to drown in. But I wasn't about to fold. Call my old Army buddy Jake, now a civil engineer. He surveyed everything, took one look at the barriers and said, "This is a deliberate redirection. During heavy rain, you're talking tens of thousands of gallons an hour, all away from where it's supposed to go." He wrote it up in a report. That same day, Winston brought out a downtown lawyer, all slick hair and silk ties. "Remove the wall, and we'll drop the suit." I slid Jake's report across the table. "My wall isn't a problem. Your client's drainage scam is." Their faces turned shades I haven't seen outside of seafood restaurants. Then the twist, Mrs. Brianna, the 70-year-old librarian down the street, showed up with a folder packed with blueprints and aerial photos. "I dug through the records," she said, "and what you're dealing with is organized fraud." She had the original drainage plans, the developer's secret work orders, evidence of foreclosed homes bought and flipped by Ashford Development after repeated flooding. 18 homes, $60,000 profit per flip, she revealed. They created the problem, then cashed in on the solution. And that was it, the whole game exposed. Fraud, environmental crime, and a scheme to squeeze working people out of their homes. Mrs. Brianna's nephew, David Liu, an environmental lawyer, filed complaints with the EPA, the county, the state, the city, every agency that mattered. But I still had one last move. See, the Ashford's secret pump system depended on a single controller behind Dr. Silverton's house. With a little creative wiring, I rigged a timer. Nothing illegal, just redirecting water back to where it was supposed to go during heavy storms. Tommy and Sarah, a couple of sharp neighborhood teens, stood lookout for me. Kids love a good underdog story. Winston tried one last dirty trick. Hired a desperate contractor named Pete to sabotage my wall. But I had cameras everywhere. When I confronted Pete, he realized Winston was using him like he'd used all of us. I paid Pete to help me fix the wall, made him my witness, and showed him the evidence of the scam. The storm hit during the next HOA meeting. A full house, rain beating down, the Ashfords giving speeches about community safety. I connected my laptop to the projector and let the truth roll out. Maps, timelines, profit margins, everything. Neighbors saw it all. How they'd been targeted, denied repairs, forced into foreclosure, then watched as their old homes were bought up cheap. Right on cue, Winston, Bell, and Dr. Silverton started getting calls. "Water's in the basement. The sump pump isn't working." Outside, their section was flooding. Meanwhile, my wall held strong. The Channel 12 news van rolled up, cameras filming as Winston flailed in knee-deep water, shouting for help while his designer furniture floated past. I just stood there and told the truth. When you mess with water, water always wins. In the weeks that followed, the EPA came down like a hammer. $847,000 in fines, mandatory restoration, criminal charges for environmental fraud, and conspiracy. Winston's insurance dropped him. Dr. Silverton lost his medical practice. Bell's Italian furniture turned to driftwood. With the Ashfords out, we voted to dissolve the old HOA. Hired a management company that actually cared about the neighborhood. Built real flood protections, created a community fund, and helped people get back on their feet. Pete started his own flood protection business. Mrs. Brianna became our unofficial historian, documenting the whole saga as a warning for others. Martha? She has more good days now. She loves sitting by my wall, watching the flowers and the safe flow of rainwater. No more nightmares, no more bullies at the gate. The wall people once laughed at is now a landmark, proof you can fight back and win, even when the deck is stacked. So, here's what I learned. Sometimes the only way to solve a problem is to hand it right back to the folks who caused it, and to never, ever let anyone tell you protecting your home is a joke. But now I've got a question for you. Where's the line between protecting your own and fighting for everyone else? What would you have done in my shoes? Drop your story in the comments, share where you're watching from, and tell me your own battle with power, justice, or just plain stubborn HOA boards. Because sometimes justice is just one storm away.